Browne. Welcome to this week's edition of MFB News. I hope you're really good. Anyone else thinking about building an ark at the moment? I'm so sick of this rain. Having said that, it's not actually raining today. But yeah, I think we're all just desperate for a bit of sunshine. So let's hope Easter weekend, which is coming around super quick, is going to be very kind to us. Now, instead of banging on about the weather, which is obviously my favourite pastime, we're going to move on to my second favourite pastime now, which is mortgages and what we've got for you this week. So we're going to do our usual roundup of what's been happening with swap rates and also lender pricing changes. We're going to chat a bit about the spring statement. Yeah, my thoughts on that, I'm going to share them with you, and also kind of share some of the thoughts that other landlords that we've been speaking to have been sharing as well. And then finally, we're going to dive into the regional snapshot report from the Mortgage Works, which really goes into region by region how landlords are feeling about the private rental sector and looking at various yields by region as well. So a bit of information there, so you can kind of see more broadly throughout the rest of the country how your landlord peers are faring and feeling at the moment. Okay, so starting off with swap rates this week, and things continue as they have been for the last few weeks to be kind of stuck essentially. Now we are due some inflation data very soon, and perhaps the content of that will kind of help unstick things. I know for those of you who watched the spring statement, Jeremy Hunt did talk about the fact that he is expecting inflation to come down to 2% or below in the next few months, and that's certainly going to help things along as well. But looking at swap rate as of now, so from 10:30 last night, 2-year swap rates 4.421. Now that's compared to 1 month ago at 4.429 and 1 year ago 4.137. So practically year on year, almost no change. 5-year swap rates 3.816. 1 month ago 3.896 and 1 year ago 3.708. Now I appreciate year on year there's been a lot that's kind of gone on in between, but actually if you go month on month, things haven't actually really moved that much. Now obviously we would like the swap rates to be stuck at a lower level, but actually the fact they're stuck is really good, because what lenders really dislike is a volatile market where rates are kind of moving around rapidly, essentially bouncing about, which we have seen, because this means it's very hard for them to know how to price. They're always going to price for a worst case scenario, because what lenders can't be doing is lending money where actually it's costing them money to lend. You know, these guys need to make profit. They're a business just like, you know, everybody else. So, you know, while we don't necessarily like where the swap rates are stuck, the fact they are stuck actually is in some way a positive. So not all bad news. So in terms of how this has shaken out for lenders over the last week, a bit of a mixed bag again. I'm becoming very repetitive, aren't I, with this? So first of all, we've seen fleet mortgages increase their 70% and 75% loan to value fixed rates, which is a bit of a shame actually, because they were incredibly competitively priced and we've been giving them lots and lots of business. So we'll be sorry to lose those rates for now. However, what they have done is introduce a lower loan to value, so 65% loan to value tier of products, which are available for their personal borrowing, limited companies, and also HMOs and multi-units. So I suspect the lower loan to value will mean that they can actually introduce some pricing here to kind of compensate for the higher pricing that the higher loan to value products are going to attract. Now, we've also seen Barclays make rate reductions of up to 0.5% across their buy-to-let range. Now, I was trying to cast my mind back. I don't remember mentioning Barclays to you guys for a really long time, which tells me they haven't actually repriced for a long time, which means they probably had higher rates, interest rates came down, and they simply hadn't repriced, which means they had the kind of ability to drop their pricing down by, you know, not an insignificant 0.5%. Now, in terms of a lender, just to touch on them very briefly, they are not what I would class as landlord friendly. They do buy to lets, but actually what they do is everything is affordability based. They're going to take all of your income and all of your debts, and that's going to include your home mortgage, you know, cars on finance, loans, credit cards, all that kind of stuff, and also all of your buy to let mortgages. And they run an affordability calculation across the whole lot to determine whether they think the loan is affordable. Now, the way this works actually is very good for those people who have a really well-paid job, or a decent salary, shall we say, or an income, who are also have maybe just their own home mortgage and no other buy-to-lets. They have disposable income knocking around. Actually, then Barclays can offer you some very competitively priced solutions. But what Barclays don't do is lend to limited companies, people with larger portfolios, any kind of the racy stuff. So really for me, I would only ever really turn my mind to them when I'm looking at placing a mortgage for a client if the client is maybe buying their first buy-to-let in their own name, or maybe have just one or two in the background and they're looking to do a simple remortgage. Now, we've also seen foundation home loans make increases to their pricing of up to 0.2%. And they've also introduced new products which are for first-time landlords buying an HMO of up to 6 rooms. So previously they weren't able to accommodate first-time landlords investing in HMOs. They've gone into that market. And that's actually really good because most of the lenders don't lend on HMOs to first-time landlords. The kind of position is actually HMOs are more complicated. There's various licensing rules. It's a baptism of fire. You go from having no letting experience to suddenly having, 6 tenants. It's a bit of a step up from no experience at all. So most of the lenders' positions is, actually, if you want to own HMOs, that's fine. Cut your teeth, getting some letting experience on sort of traditional buy-to-lets, and then come back to us maybe in a year's time. There are lenders who can lend on HMOs to first-time landlords. Generally speaking, don't expect anything of more than 6 rooms though, guys. But actually, it's really good to see Foundation make a step into this arena as well. Now, we've seen TSB increase some of their 2-year fixed rates by 0.2%. TSB, vanilla lender, personal borrowing, 10 properties in the background, that kind of stuff. We don't use them a lot, I think, because there's nothing wrong with them and they're a perfectly good lender, but actually their pricing is never the cheapest and their criteria is never flexible enough that it really kind of scoops up those people who are falling outside of the kind of norm, as it were. So good to see them reduce. Will it make any difference to most of our clients? Probably not, if I'm brutally honest. We've seen TML increase their 5-year fixed rates by 0.2%, and we've seen Landbay reduce their HMO and multi-unit products by up to 0.25%. Again, they're a lender who kind of priced up quite aggressively when the rates started really climbing. So they've kind of just, I guess, got comfortable, been able to obtain pricing. Now things have settled, so they've been able to reduce rates, but they have also made reductions to their standard products of, so standard property products. 5-year fixed rates are down by 0.1%. And lastly, hot off the press, while I've been talking to you, an email has popped into my inbox telling me that the Coventry Building Society are going to be making reductions to their buy-to-let rates, both on 2-year fixed rates and 5-year fixed rates. It doesn't tell me how much by, but if you are considering the Coventry as a lender, just know their pricing is about to come down within the next 24 hours. Now, the Coventry they've got one USP that I really love, actually. As much as I like them as a lender, I find them really fantastic. So these are a lender who are looking to lend only to individuals on really straightforward properties. But one of the things they do is, for most lenders who are offering kind of vanilla buy-to-let rates, they only lend if you've got up to 10 buy-to-let properties. Once you've got more than 10, you kind of move into the more specialist end of the market. With the Coventry, what they do is they have this 10 property limit cap, like other lenders, but they ignore anything you have in a limited company. So that can work actually quite well for those landlords who started off investing years ago in their personal names after Section 24, then started using a limited company. So they've now got a portfolio in aggregate of over 10 properties, but they've still got maybe a handful in their own names. So the Coventry can actually help you out here, and that's where you're going to get your best pricing. So in terms of where this leaves us, where are we? So when I was just kind of looking to do a summary of products, pricing from in certain circumstances, what I've done is I've ignored all of the rates which have an arrangement fee of more than 3% of the loan amount, because there are rates out there which are very, very low, but they have an arrangement fee of up to 9.99% of the loan amount. And most people, when you give them those products, they kind of just laugh at you. So what I've done is I've kind of tried to be balanced in this. So at the moment, if you're an individual and you're taking a 2-year fixed rate on a standard property, your rates are going to be from 3.97 and your 5-year fixed rates are going to be from 4%. If you're a limited company, you're looking at 2-year fixed rates from 5.1 and 5-year fixed rates from 5.09%. So actually across the board, broadly speaking, personal borrowing 2 and 5-year fixed rates from 4%, and limited companies 2 and 5-year fixed rates from 5.1, if you want a kind of rough cut guide to do maths on going forwards. Okay, so moving on to the spring statement, which I kind of naively had high hopes for, and actually was a bit of an anticlimax. In fact, I'll go so far as to say it's disappointment. Some landlords have really taken it as landlord bashing again. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that sentiment personally. I think it could have been more favourable towards landlords. But actually there were sort of, you know, some potential wins in there for landlords as well. So the first thing that I think is really important to share with you is that the way that income from holiday lets is going to be taxed is going to be aligned now with normal buy-to-lets, i.e. we're going to be losing the interest relief going forwards. Now this hasn't really been kind of delivered in granular detail, so there's lots of question marks around this. But fundamentally, holiday lets going forwards will be taxed as normal buy-to-let properties. And I think this is the one that's kind of probably put the largest cat amongst the pigeons in terms of reaction from landlords. So yeah, disappointing there for sure. But I think actually what it's fair to say is that there's been a bit of writing on the wall in terms of the government's approach towards holiday lets, with various kind of talk about legislation changes, licensing, that kind of thing coming in. So while it's disappointing, I don't know this is necessarily a huge shock. Now, capital gains tax. So higher rate of capital gains tax is reducing from 28% to 24%. Now, it's been freely admitted by the government that they are looking to encourage landlords and second homeowners to sell their properties, to push more properties onto the market, to kind of give more opportunity to basically first-time buyers in short terms. So again, I think there's a kind of mixed message here. So the kind of positive is, if you are thinking about selling a buy-to-let property, which lots of people are, good news, your capital gains tax rate is going to reduce. The bad news is, what this kind of tells us is that actually the government is still very much pro trying to kind of get landlords to offload their properties. And I think maybe that's the message that landlords have taken from this and kind of had a bit of a reaction to, and understandably. So a positive and a negative there. Another one that came out, which is the one that kind of I found maybe most disappointing actually, is the end of multiple dwelling relief for stamp duty. So essentially this is where if you're buying more than one residential property in one go, you could be eligible for relief on stamp duty. That's going to be abolished. The impact on this mainly impacts those people who are buying a freehold of flats. So whereas previously a freehold of flats would have been eligible for multiple dwellings relief, that's going to disappear, and it's disappearing really quickly. I think June of this year was when it disappeared. Now, one thing interestingly that it's worth just noting is that this isn't going to impact those people who are buying semi-commercial properties. So if you're buying a shop with 3 flats above, actually this isn't being scooped into the abolishment of multiple dwellings relief. It's only applicable where the property is purely residential, as I understand it. Now, as always, anything tax related, we're not tax advisors here at MFB, so do speak to the appropriate people. But actually that's kind of the way that I've interpreted, and the way that a lot of landlord communities online have interpreted the spring statement. So I think for me, actually, it was disappointing. I do understand why landlords are feeling pretty bruised from it. I suppose once you've gone through the experience of Section 24 being introduced, the stamp duty surcharge, you kind of expect the worst from these statements. So actually it could have been worse than it actually was. But I think a lot of people were sort of hoping the government would recognise the difficulties in the private rental sector, recognising that the landlords exiting the market is causing a real problem in the private rental sector. And we were hoping that things would be maybe more encouraging landlords to stay in the market, encouraging new landlords to come in. But there you go. So that was our spring statement from last week. Now, for those of you who watch this regularly, you will know that I love a Mortgage Works report, because they spend an obscene amount of money going out and surveying loads of landlords, and then they feed it back in these beautifully presented little kind of infographic reports for me, and I get to deliver them to you. So thank you very much to the Mortgage Works. Excuse me. And what they've delivered most recently is their regional snapshot report, which talks about various things in terms of landlords' view on the market, confidence in the market, and kind of plans as well. So talking kind of across the whole of the UK, first of all. So what they've essentially said is that the outlook for landlords and their confidence has remained stable. So first of all, landlords' confidence in terms of capital gains for their property has increased by just 1%. Confidence in the UK private rental sector has increased by 2%. Confidence in the UK financial market has increased by 5%, so a big step up. And what I would say is this is obviously covering off the previous quarter, so last quarter in 2023. So obviously things were kind of improving in terms of interest rates, and they've kind of gone backwards slightly. So maybe this report in the next quarter won't be quite as complimentary towards the UK financial market. And actually the one that was quite surprising is confidence in rental yields has actually reduced by just 1%. Now, what the report went on to say kind of broadly across the UK is that rental arrears and void periods experienced in the last 12 months have come down to 27%. So 27% of respondents have experienced rent arrears or void periods. That's a reduction, so that's really encouraging. Tenant demand has decreased a tiny bit to 63%, so 63% of respondents are now seeing a slight, well, actually they're talking about an increase in tenant demand, and the number of people experiencing an increase in tenant demand has reduced. Interestingly, 4% of respondents bought a property in the last 12 months and 8% of respondents had sold a property in the last 12 months. So there's still a kind of exiting of landlords in terms of trend of behaviours. Now, looking at each region more granularly. So first of all, looking at London. So London has reported a significant decrease in tenant demand, 19% lower indeed. Voids and rent arrears dropped also in the last quarter, and the average yield in London is currently sitting at 4%. If we look at outer London, confidence has reduced in all areas of the market, bar the UK private rental sector more broadly. So essentially in outer London, confidence in things like capital gains, rental yields and the UK financial market had reduced. But actually, more broadly, just what do you think about the private rental sector? Confidence had increased. Yield confidence was the largest drop, and this was down by 18%, and it's the only region to report an increase of 7% in voids. The average yield in this area is 4.6%, so that's outer London for you. Now, moving on to the northwest, they experienced an increase of 6% confidence in rental yields, which is really, really good. High proportion of landlords are making a profit in this area. The average yield here is 6.1%, and those are making a loss reduced. The number of landlords actually losing money on their buy-to-lets has reduced. Voids had increased by 8% in the northwest. Southeast of England, the confidence seems very, very stable, with the main uptick in the UK financial market. Again, this may change once we've kind of gone through this next quarter. The number of landlords in the southeast selling has actually reduced as well, and your average yield in the southeast is 5.3%. And then finally, the southwest. I did notice actually in their report, they haven't actually covered the northeast of England. So I'm sorry for those of you in the northeast, it just wasn't on there. But the southwest of England has experienced the largest drop in confidence in rental yields and the highest increase in confidence in capital gains. Number of arrears and voids were down, and the average yield in the southwest of England is sitting at 5.7%. So I think what this really illustrates is the different experience of being a landlord depending on where you're located. I think for those in the northwest, these are the guys who are making the largest yield, they're making the most amount of profit. And they're also sort of still experiencing confidence in rental yields. So potentially maybe the northwest could be the place to go and invest if yields are kind of your thing. But like I say, you know, it's a really mixed bag. If you do want a copy of this report, by the way, you can just email us and I can share it with you. It's absolutely no problem at all. Always makes really, really interesting reading. And that is everything for this week. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. I hope you found that helpful. And as always, if you have any questions you'd like for question of the week that you'd like answered, or any other suggestions about how we can improve this video so the content of it is really useful to you, please just get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, if you do want to give us a call to talk through your mortgage requirements, 0345 345 6788, or have a look at our website. Look after yourselves until next week and have a really fantastic weekend.